Hello and welcome to Right Sports Talk. My name is Zach. We've officially made it through 7 weeks of the UFL regular season. In week 7, I went 3-3 with my predictions, giving me an overall record of 15-13 on the season. Now let's get into these picks for week 8. Week 8 kicks off this Friday night, May 16th, as the Memphis Showboats, who are 1-6, take on the San Antonio Brahmas, who are also 1-6. Memphis is coming off of a loss to the St. Louis Battlehawks this past Sunday, and the San Antonio Brahmas are coming off of a loss to the DC Defenders. In that loss, San Antonio's offense really looked the best it had all season. I don't know what it is, but in their 2 games they've played against DC, obviously the first time they played DC this season, San Antonio got the win. It was the best they had looked up to that point all season. And then this past week, once again, against the DC Defenders, I don't know what it is. They look very good against DC, and they don't look all that great against anybody else. But for some reason, they have some weird mojo that happens when they take on DC. That being said, my pick for this game is I am actually going to pick the Memphis Showboats to get the victory. As good as San Antonio looked against DC, I don't really trust that they can sustain that. And Memphis has actually been playing pretty, despite the record, they've been playing pretty good. They've been keeping games very close. In St. Louis, their defense played very well, forcing turnovers, forcing quarterbacks Max Duggan into some mistakes. They could have had a couple more interceptions, but had some drops. They got 1 interception. Could have had a couple more. Dresser Wynn continues to play decent. He's, not playing great, but hopefully, as he gains experience, that will help him. Also, one thing that should really help this offense is it'll be the second game back for wide receiver Dawood Davis, who is a very talented wide receiver. He was one of the more talented receivers in the UFL last season, who did not make the roster initially. He started off the season on IR due to, because he was banged up and injured. He's come back now. He did not make much of an impact against St. Louis, however, they did target him like 5 times. They just missed him on a few throws. Jonathan Adams continues to play well. So I think that could really make the difference maker. Plus their defense looking as good as it has throughout this season. I think the Memphis Showboats can get the victory here over San Antonio. Now, Saturday, May 17th, there are 2 games happening, but they are happening at the same time, both on Fox. This is something that the UFL did last season that I'm not really a big fan of, to have 2 games at the same time, because you're essentially taking eyes away from a product that kind of already struggles a little bit to get eyes and attention to it. I think that this would have served much better if they had still had 2 games, but split them up, have your 1 o'clock game and then a 4 o'clock game, or a later in the night game, like they had been doing throughout other points of the season. When they would have 2 games, they do it constantly on Sundays, where they'll have a noon game and a 3 o'clock game, and the few times they've had Saturday games, doubleheaders, they've had an afternoon game and an evening game. Unfortunately, here they are going with 2 games at 1 o'clock on Fox. So one of those games is the Birmingham Stallions, who are 5-2, taking on the St. Louis Battlehawks, who are also 5-2. Birmingham coming off of a win over the Houston Roughnecks, in which they actually had to have a comeback victory, as they were down 25-12 at halftime. So they had to make a second half comeback, in which their defense played really well. Their offense started to pick up steam. Case Cookits, their quarterback, actually wound up suffering an injury in the 4th quarter. So Jamar Smith, who is now their 5th quarterback to get game action this season, who was retired at the beginning of the season. He went through training camp with Birmingham. He's been with Birmingham since 2022. He was their starting quarterback back in 2022 when they won the USFL championship. But he had retired at the beginning of the season. And then due to injuries, they brought him back a couple weeks ago to be their emergency QB, and he was their backup going into this week, and then he had to help lead the game-winning drive at the end of the fourth quarter here after not playing a single snap all season. And one thing that really helped out their comeback a lot was their running game. It's really the best the run game has looked all season, with both Ricky Pearson and CJ Maribel scoring rushing touchdowns. And on top of that, two other key factors in their comeback was tight end Jay Sternberger and wide receiver Deion King. He really led the way in the receiving game. Jay Sternberger actually having a receiving touchdown. I believe it was his second receiving touchdown of the season. Those two had very big games to help bolster this offense and really get the comeback going, as well as their defense not allowing Houston to do anything in the second half. Now, for St. Louis, they are coming off that win over the Memphis Showboats, where their offense had some struggles. As I mentioned, Max Duggan had an interception. He could have had a couple more interceptions that were dropped. Their run game couldn't really get anything going. But and even in the receiving game, Hakeem Butler was kind of shut down. He's somebody that back-to-back weeks had touchdown receptions and had pretty big games. But the key for St. Louis really this week and continuing on from the past 2 weeks has been their defense. Their defense played very well. It was the second game in a row they've held an opponent to single-digit points, holding Memphis to only 9 points. So, as much as their offense struggled, their defense allowed them to stay in that game, as well as their kicker, Rodrigo Blankenship, who has been, in my opinion, the best kicker in the UFL this year. He hasn't missed at all this season. I believe he's 16 for 16 on field goal attempts. So he made a very big difference in this game. Now, my pick for this game, I think, honestly, it could go either way, as both these teams are very talented. But I am going to go with the Birmingham Stallions to get the victory. It's very difficult for me to pick against Birmingham. I thought they weren't going to beat Houston. I thought Houston was going to be able to get the victory over Birmingham because they have been struggling. But even when Birmingham struggles, if you give them any chance at all, if you allow them to stay in the game, they find a way to win. And I think that's something that could happen here, where it could be a very close game throughout. But Birmingham just finds a way and finds the ability to squeak out a victory. So I do think that Birmingham comes out with the victory here over St. Louis. Now, the other game you have on Saturday at 1 o'clock on Fox, you have the Michigan Panthers, who are 5-2, taking on the Houston Roughnecks, who are 3-4. Michigan is coming off of a win over the Arlington Renegades, where they scored a literal last-second touchdown and then 1-point conversion to win the game, 25-24. And Houston, obviously coming off that loss to the Birmingham Stallions, in which they started off so well in the first half, going into halftime with that 13-point lead, and then in the second half just couldn't do anything to put the game away. They allowed Birmingham to score on their last 6 drives of the game, and they just and Houston, their offense went out the second half, and they kept sputtering. They weren't able to get anything going, and they were never able to do anything to definitively swing the game back into their favor and get the momentum going back their way, and just they weren't able to find a way to put the game away and keep Birmingham down. So my pick for this game, it's another game I think could be very close, as Houston has been playing very well and Michigan has been playing very well, but I think Michigan gets the victory here. Their main reason is because of their quarterback play and their offense. They've got Bryce Perkins, who is an MVP caliber player right now. He's 3rd in the league in passing yards. I believe he's also 3rd in rushing yards. Oh, and Michigan's running back Toa Taua is also top 5 in rushing yards and has had a rushing touchdown, I think, each of the last 3 weeks. He is a player that has been playing very well since they brought him in. I believe back in week 3, he's just continued to play better in this offense. And defensively, Michigan just plays well. They do enough to, stay in games. They don't let teams, score too much. Michigan finds ways to hang around in games, and then allows them to, win, and then allows them to pick up victories. I think that's something that could happen this week against Houston. I think this is another game that could be very close, as Houston is a very tough team. They're a very, good team, especially compared to where they were even, just a month ago, especially compared to where they were at the beginning of the season. But I don't think they're quite there to take that, next step and be on the same level as the Michigan Panthers. So I do think that Michigan comes away with the victory here. Then your final game of the weekend on Sunday, May 18th, you have the Arlington Renegades, who are 3-4, taking on the DC Defenders, who are 5-2. Arlington coming off that last-second loss to the Michigan Panthers. DC Defenders coming off of their kind of close victory over the Birmingham Stallions, over the San Antonio Brahmas. These are two teams that played each other a few weeks ago in a very high-scoring shootout. And I honestly think that this game could be very similar to that one, as both these teams have two of the top quarterbacks in the league in Jordan Ta'amu for the DC Defenders and Luis Perez for the Arlington Renegades. And both those quarterbacks are actually 1-2 in terms of passing yardage this season, as Jordan Ta'amu leads the league in passing yards, and Luis Perez is right behind him at 2. Two very high-powered offenses, but I am going to go with the DC Defenders to get this victory, as their offense plays very well, their defense makes plays when they have to, and Arlington is kind of regressed as the season's gone on, more so playing like their 2024 selves, their last season team, where they allow teams to stick around too long. They just haven't, especially against the Michigan Panthers, and there's been a couple other instances this season where they will be in the driver's seat, and then they kind of take their foot off the gas, and the other team starts to come back, and Arlington can't do anything about it. They weren't able to stop Michigan last week at the end of the game. A few weeks ago when they played DC in a very high-scoring shootout, DC got the victory there because Arlington couldn't really find a way to put the game away. And I think this game could be very similar. So I do think that the DC Defenders get the victory here. Let me know in the comments who you guys think are going to win this week. Let me know if you want to talk about who you think is going to make the playoffs. Right now for the USFL, it looks like the two representatives could be Birmingham and Michigan, unless Houston can make a run. And for the XFL conference, it looks like the two representatives could be the Battlehawks and the Defenders, unless Arlington can really make a run. But let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.